Canada.
Alain Deneault from Réseau pour la justice fiscale du Québec.
And it was very interesting to hear what you had to say in the context of Jersey, especially because of the historic links between Canada and Jersey, or Channel Islands more correctly, especially Newfoundland and so on. So Jerseymen have been going out there since the 16th century, but you had a rather different perspective about the role of Canada developing tax havens in the Caribbean from the end of the 19th century, which came as a bit of a surprise to some people, I think.
Yeah, well, already there was, during the time of New France and of the colony, tight relationships, commercial relationships between the Caribbean and Canada, and especially the eastern provinces. So, starting from there, the Canadian jurisdiction at the end of the 19th century wished to integrate the British dependencies of the Caribbean into its own territory. It wasn't accepted by London, though London gave access to Canadian.
Sorry, can I just ask, are you here for a conference?
Yeah. Do you want
to? For a conference, he's just doing an interview.
Right, we're with a gentleman from
at the end of the 19th century, Canada had these important commercial relationships with countries or British dependencies of the Caribbean. So Canada wished to integrate those jurisdiction to its own territory. London refused, but gave Canadians access to the banking sector in the Caribbean. At that point, for decades, banks developed their activities in the Caribbean. In the middle of the 20th century, approximately 80% of the banking activities of the Caribbean were managed by Canadians. And at that time, we saw appearing the question of the euro dollars and the euro market in London after the development of the Marshall Plan. It's a bit complicated to explain in all details, but what we can say is that there was plenty of funds that had to be channeled that could be channeled in offshore legislations. So the bank.
So basically, this was government-led initiative. This was
well, the Canadian banks that were already present in the Caribbean dependencies saw the opportunity to create their offshore states that would allow them to get access to these resources, and also to create structure that would facilitate tax avoiding, tax evasion, and money laundering.
It's not the image of Canada which we come to know and love, is it?
Well, when we do researches, we learn that in fact Canadians went to Jamaica, to the Bahamas, to the Cayman Islands, and then to other countries to create all the legal programs and the legal system that make these dependencies and colonies or former British colonies the tax havens that we know, which are very controversial. For instance, in Jamaica or in the Bahamas, it's former Minister of Finance or former member of banks that went there to create, to consult the authorities so that they would create all those financial facilities in the purpose of offshore management. For instance, in the Bahamas, Donald Fleming, which was former Minister of Finance, went to the island, served during a bit more than 10 years for the Scotia Bank, and during his 15 years on the island, also consulted the authorities in order to helped them shape their jurisdiction so that it would become the tax haven that we know today. In the Cayman Islands, it's Jim McDonald, a lawyer from Calgary, who went there and also participated to the counsel, the advice that were given to the authorities to create these the legal disposal so that the offshore activities could be held there. Jim McDonald also created the legal firm McDonald and Calder and Maples that became after Maples and Calder, such as we know it today. And McDonald and Maples wasn't an ordinary legal firm. This firm was specializing in creating offshore products, but also in shaping the Cayman jurisdiction as such, giving itself the perfect and idealistic jurisdiction in order to develop products that it would be the only one to propose. And we saw afterwards Canadians getting involved in the development of offshore activities in a very intensive way in the 20th century. And at the beginning of our century, in 2006, for instance, Halifax became an offshore center, allowing Bermuda firms or entities to manage their operation with accountants hired in Halifax. So you have accountants in Halifax, this city in eastern Canada, that work directly for firms that are established in the Bermudas and that benefit from the business climate there.
Is this known of in Canada? Is people not aware of this?
People aren't aware of it in a broad sense. I mean, there is an important minority that is trying to raise the issue, and it's important to do so because there is a huge gap between what is historically and today Canada and the image Canada gives of itself, and it's important that we reduce these gaps in order to have
obviously one of the reasons that's been discussed today is that governments obviously raise taxation for purposes, to provide schools and hospitals and build roads. Is that infrastructure suffering in Canada? Is it noticeable?
If you look at I mean, what we're living now in Canada is the transformation of Canada into a tax haven without noticing it. For decades, tax havens was already the legal haven of the mining industry. 75% of the mining corporations of the world are registered in Canada. Canada also is very friendly to corporations in the middle tax point of view. But also we see inside the country, Canada and especially Quebec becoming sort of a free zone for the mining industry. So it's very easy nowadays for a mining corporation to have access to the mining resources in Canada without paying any kind of royalties, to have public support to develop its own activities or to hire people. The government will build roads, build a port, and help this industry in any way it can, although at the end this industry pollutes and pays often absolutely no taxes. So, and we're seeing a weakened government becoming more and more oppressive, and we are seeing also this jurisdiction, this offshore competition weakening years after years the government when the times come to tax corporations.
Of course, banks, Nova Scotia Bank used to be in Jersey, I don't think it's there now. maybe it is, I don't know. Royal Bank of Scotland is still in Jersey as far as I know. These banks have been quite prominent there. Is there any other banks that have been prominent in this?
Well, all the major banks of Canada have subsidiaries in tax havens, but the Scotia Bank and the Royal Bank of Canada, and also we could say the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce, were the first ones to get involved in tax havens, to participate to the elaboration, the development of the jurisdictions as such. I mean, in the middle 60s, the Minister of Finance of the Bahamas, which was Sir Stafford Sands, was at the same time a member of the board of directors of the Royal Bank of Canada. He was, I guess, flying to Montreal, taking decisions on behalf of its bank, and at the same time participating to the debate in the council of his country. And I don't think he was schizophrenic, so he was able to shape a jurisdiction that fit perfectly to with the interests of its bank.
We heard speakers at this conference from all over the world. Does that reassure you or make you even more concerned?
Well, of course we are all concerned about this issue. I mean, it is as important as the environmental crisis we're in, but on a political basis. I mean, nowadays, sovereign actors are not the public deciders anymore, but wealthy people or multinationals that have access to about half of the world's stock money that is registered in tax havens. So from there, they don't only hide money, they use money in the purpose of conducting activities without any kind of constraint. This is what they do.
I often ask the question in Jersey, what's the useful purpose of tax havens? Can you think of a useful purpose for them?
No, and this is the, I would say, the opportunity critic people have, is that to consider that they are in front of a problem that is not supportable, that it cannot be defended on a theoretical basis. Nobody can defend the fact that some people are taking money out of the public system while they benefit from it, and it's the case of the multinational corporations.
Thank you much indeed.
Thank you.